the whole thing.
There you are.
My name is Bob Krigo, and I work with Wisconsin Grassroots Network. My vision for this track, which if you notice there was one that's called the Grassroots Resistance, was to identify what's going on around the state, give groups that are invoking change in our society to have a chance to explain themselves, and then in this last session come together, answer questions, bring our heads together, think about how we can better serve our communities, serve in change. If you Google North Pole hurricane, you'll find an article that'll talk about a hurricane that drove the temperatures 60 degrees above normal this winter in the North Pole, and the issues that this is usually a very unusual event, but this has been more intense, and there have been 4 of them in the past year. So this is very, very unusual and has people very concerned about the change in our weather and so on. So the clock is ticking is what I'm saying. So let's, this session we'll talk a little bit about direct action, about what's been happening in the past, what we've done, how we can create change, and then we'll have questions of the panelists, and we can talk about what are we going to do, how are we going to change our society, how can we work together, how can we bring pressure on our cultures to bring about the change that we know we have to have, that the way we're going is so consuming, and we got to get to sustainable and so on. So you know what the issues are. How do we come together as groups? How do we come together as people? How do we come together as communities to work, to educate, to move forward? So with that, Dave Williams will be giving his part.
I'm David Williams. I'm a member of the Madison Industrial Workers of the World. But I'm not speaking officially as a representative of the IWW. I'm simply stating my own views. I also have coordinated for many years in Madison a forum called the Peregrine Forum, which some of you may have heard of. It's one day after the Republican health care debacle in Congress, and I think that's something we all should feel pretty good about. And let's hope for more, I'm sure. But we should be realistic and know that a lot of bad legislation and a lot of bad policies are going to be inflicted on the American people in the next 4 years. And what do we do about it? I realize and appreciate that this is largely a progressive Democrat gathering, and that many people here look forward to a big progressive backlash against the Republicans in 2018 and 2020. And beyond that, I appreciate that many of you look forward to taking the Democratic Party away from the corporate interests on the national level and reforming the American political system, all the way from getting rid of gerrymandering and getting, repealing, revoking Citizens United and all the other changes that have to be made to fix our political system. And fixing the political system, hopefully, we'll be able to fix the corporate economy, right? And the environmental problems and so on. As a radical leftist, I would not necessarily be unhappy to see such reforms. And given the narrow choices offered by the American two-party system, I confess, even as a member of the IWW, that I frequently vote for Democrats. The few progressives in the races for higher office, or as the lesser evil. But as a radical leftist, I'm not optimistic that the main path to major reforms in America will come through the corporate-dominated political system. The millions of dollars that are required to run for higher office in our country, to me, guarantees the continued domination of corporate interests, and corporate interests that aren't in our interests. The liberals and progressives will still manage to get elected, and we may enjoy brief moments of temporary respite and amelioration, in our downward spiral in the United States and in the world. But the time will come, I believe, when Americans are going to look for something else besides elections in order to remedy our situation. And this has happened at other times in American history. And these times of unrest and upheaval, I myself am, like many of you, a product of the 1960s, fall under the general heading of direct action. The buzzword today, of course, is resistance. And for those of you who aren't from Madison and didn't have a chance to get to read the Isthmus newspaper periodically, I brought some extra copies of the issue of the Cap Times. The Cap Times. I brought the copies with me that it was published right after the huge Women's March in D.C. and in Madison and in other cities across the country. And the lead article is titled "Beyond Marching." So if you didn't get a copy of that, it's in the pile of literature over there. So what do we mean by resistance and direct action? The leading American theorist of nonviolent struggle, Gene Sharp, a retired professor now living in Boston, Massachusetts, and coordinating the Einstein Institute, has drawn up a list of 198 possible methods of nonviolent action, and I trust everyone here now has a copy of that, thanks to my friend and fellow IWW member Martina. These methods range from the very familiar and comfortable, purely symbolic methods of protest and persuasion, that's the first broad category, to various forms of social, economic, and political non-cooperation, that's the second broad category, and finally move to the forceful and more risky methods of nonviolent physical intervention, such as sit-ins, blockades, occupations, etc. The tactics of Indivisible and the enormous women's demonstration on January 25th clearly fall in the first category of symbolic protest and persuasion, whereas the Standing Rock occupation and blockade clearly falls in the category of nonviolent physical intervention. I fear that whatever the prospects for electoral remedies in the United States in the years ahead, you and me and all of us are going to have Plan B, which means we need to begin now to lay foundations for nonviolent direct action movements. This will be necessary whether we're under the rule of the right-wing Republicans or under the rule of the Republican national corporate Democrats. Okay, so various forms of nonviolent direct action are going to be needed, whether to fight for short-term reforms and ameliorations, or as we head toward economic and environmental breakdown, as Mike Ippolito is warning at this conference, billions of people are going to have to mobilize to take over land, water resources, and confiscate big corporate assets in order to create a democratic, cooperative, survival economy down the road. All of us should therefore collaborate in disseminating and teaching the various forms of nonviolent action in workshops, study groups, and full-blown courses in a variety of community venues across Wisconsin. And the Madison IWW and the Peregrine Forum are ready to collaborate with any of you in such efforts. Education and preparing for direct action also needs to be part of a broader grassroots educational collaborative. Clearly, American society is very, very polarized. I mean, Kathleen Kramer and Scott Witkoff and Mike McCabe and others are here, driving that home to us as if the 2016 elections hasn't done that already. Americans are polarized, right and left into their own silos, echo chambers, whether it be on social media, or in their personal social networks. And at the same time, you have a huge number of Americans who are kind of out in the vast middle politically, and go back and forth. The swing voters, and a lot of them are apolitical most of the time. So progressives in the left need to renew an old American tradition of going out and engaging our citizens in direct face-to-face discussion. And that's another valuable point that Kathy Kramer and Scott Witkoff and others are driving home to us, at this conference. These days, sadly enough, that only happens during electoral campaigns when volunteers go out and knock on doors or do phone banking for candidates. Okay, and it takes place in a context of electioneering dominated by big money and media sound bites, focused less on the rational discussion of issues and more on abstract personalities and emotion-driven images. So, what I'm arguing is, why don't we organize a large-scale, grassroots, general educational collaborative involving many different progressive advocacy groups, which would be an ongoing effort, transcending election campaigns and partisan political loyalties. We could pool our literature, we could pool our volunteers, and depending on the urgencies of the situation, we could do outreach and education either around single issues of the moment or around clusters of closely related issues. We could do this in such traditional ways as tabling in public places and at community public events, going door to door with literature drops and person-to-person canvassing. We could utilize traditional print materials such as talking points, fact sheets, and resource lists with links to more information available on the internet. The initial phases of such outreach collaborative would identify the most supportive and sympathetic individuals and organizations, draw them into subsequent outreach efforts, including more canvassing and holding meetings in a variety of venues such as living rooms, churches, community centers, cafes, bookstores, etc. People concerned with certain issues and clusters of issues could form teams to do outreach and education around those issues. Issue education and advocacy could also go hand in hand with education around the 198 methods of nonviolent action. Depending on the success or failure of electoral and legislative remedies to our economic, social, and environmental crises, these autonomous collaborative networks could evolve in the direction of nonviolent direct action. Activists concerned with progressive electoral work would benefit from such an effort as it would broaden the pool of progressive-minded people in the state of Wisconsin. I'm finished, but just a couple of announcements. I did bring some literature based on the Gene Sharp approach, nonviolent struggle. I am co-presenting with John Peck, Family Farm Defenders in the IWW, a course at the Christ Presbyterian Church in Madison on nonviolent struggle. It's a course where we have 6 classes every other Tuesday, and we've had 2 of them. And for those of you in Madison, we have several more to go. So you're certainly welcome to drop in or join us. And there's an informational flyer on that over there, along with the literature. The last 2 announcements is I'm wearing another hat recently, and that is in Madison we're trying to revive the Gray Panthers. The Gray Panthers kind of went into a hiatus sometime around 2009, 2010. Their national office closed in D.C., but they are up and running again. There's 8 or 9 local networks now forming across the country, and I think the time will be coming. It will be a time whose idea has come. So I have literature on that over there. And finally, if anybody's interested in a grassroots educational collaborative, please sign my little yellow sheet here. I'll pass it around. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So my vision for the next part of this is to give each of these folks presented at earlier, and not everybody was here for that. So for those, I would like Peter to give 2 to 5 minutes kind of overview of what Wisconsin Revolution is doing, how it plans on impacting our culture, our society, and making change to make us better, and then we'll go on from there.
Great. So I'll stand up here briefly. Peter Rickman, one of the officers and organizers of our Wisconsin Revolution, which is the state chapter for our revolution, which emerged from the Sanders campaign for president. Unfortunately, I won't get to give the whole rap. I'm sure you'll catch it on the internet, thanks to Bob's videotaping here. So I want to offer up 3 things about our approach to this. So I'm a committed radical. I also think we need a political strategy for power. So I've risked and taken arrest more times than I care to count. I've engaged in many of the Gene Sharp identified forms of direct action. But I think at this moment, we're recognizing that state power matters. Who controls the levers of government determines a great deal. And I'm sick and goddamn tired of raising the flag of righteousness and hoping that people will salute and watch the march on by. It's a phrase I use a fair amount. I am far more interested in us taking power to govern and realizing what our vision for a just, equitable, and democratic society could be like. So we need a political strategy, but it's not just a political strategy of tailing in behind the people with a D next to their name on a ballot. That has virtually no interest to me, and it's a proven failure. So our view on this is we need a political organization with a real strategy and plan to win, to bring movements from the streets to the ballot box in the halls of government. It's something where we need movement demands to become the basis of governance. And that means that we need to have real power if we're going to move on those. That's why we need to bring the demands of movements in the streets into the ballot box to put our own people there to govern. That's the only way we're going to realize what these demands are in governance. I'm not particularly interested in continuing to defend against further steps backwards. We actually need to take constructive steps forward to address the climate crisis and any other number of things that we could talk about. We could fill up a weekend just talking about the crises that we face. We need to start making progress, and that means having an alternative form of governance. So I think there's some basic elements of what we need to put together, and that's what we're doing in our Wisconsin Revolution. So we need a program for governance. That's pretty easy. We have no shortage of solutions, but we know that there's a platform that actually has galvanized thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in Wisconsin and millions around the country. It's the platform on which Bernie Sanders ran. It's a pretty goddamn good one if you ask me, but it's also one, I'm sorry, and I had to do this before, please don't count this against my time. I apologize in advance for my language. I'm an inveterate organizer that spends a great deal of time with in venues where that sort of language is accepted, and it gets far worse. I'll keep it relatively clean here. So, where was I? Oh, cursing up a storm. This great goddamn platform that we have. So Bernie Sanders ran on that, and it was tremendously successful. We know that it resonates. Public opinion polls show that people are with us and all sorts of things. Why not take that and bring it to the state and local level? There's no reason we can't address climate change in cities and counties around the state. There's no reason we can't get big money out of politics in our elections for common councils and school boards and county boards. There's no reason that we can't raise the wages for working people in this state at the city and the county level. We can't do everything, but we can make real progress and show that our ideas can work in government. But if we're going to do that, we need to fight for those things with a view towards how we're going to put our own people in office. So we are going to run our own candidates. I look around this room, I see at least 2 people I know that run for office. I hope there are others. More, I believe that if we get more of our own people running for office with a competent campaign and organization behind them, we can start to not just put our own people in office, but to then start governing on that program. So what we need to do is recruit our candidates, and we need to build an organization to move behind them. I'm getting the sign that I need to cut it off, and it's actually getting more vigorous, so I'm a little concerned. I'm going to step back and get closer to my seat and get out of the way. I look forward to the discussion. Political strategy, organization, bring the Sanders political revolution into 2017 and beyond.
Eric Upchurch with Council of Communities, and he spoke this morning, and he'll give his vision and talk about how he sees changing the world and us making a difference.
Thank you. Stand up here. So, Council of Communities is a collaborative, it's a platform for collaborative impact, weighted direct democracy, emphasis on the weighted piece. We like to believe that we live in a democracy where the people's voice matters, and I bet most of you wouldn't really agree that your voice is actually heard, and if it is heard, that it actually matters when it comes to making big decisions. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay. Well, the weighted portion is toward those that are most impacted by whatever the issue is. So before I get into this, I think that all the valiant efforts of our community are great, and it's wonderful. It's important. We need folks that want to do good work. There are just too many of them wanting to do this good work. And I should take that back. It's not that there's too many of them. It's that they all think that they know the best way individually to see the solution through. And so you have one effort competing with the next effort. And the thing that we're trying to change can just kind of sit and watch this beautiful show as we compete against each other toward the same end. It doesn't make sense. There's an overabundance of resources among us, an overabundance of knowledge and understanding and desire and need to make change happen. So why don't we see it? One is that competition among ourselves. The other is that we're not listening to the voice of those most impacted. These well-meaning people get into a room and decide what's best for other folks. It's not fair to our elected officials. It's not fair to anyone to expect them to understand the nuances of my unique lived experience. I'm the expert for me, and I'd like to think that you all believe that you're the expert for your particular issues. Does anybody here feel like I know what's best for you? No? You sure? Because I may be running for office. Somebody told me I should. And I'm thinking about it. But the issue here is that the people that are in office are just people like you and me. But why is it that their voice is respected more? And in some cases, many cases, their voice actually isn't respected as much as we wish they were. And even if their voice was respected to the degree that they could actually make some change, are they making my change? What has history shown us? Not quite. The Council of Communities hopes to mitigate that and bringing organizations that are doing good work together around the issues that are elevated to the surface from the voice of those that are most impacted. We were actually in this room earlier, and what you see on the board here through that 3-track process, voicing, informing, and organizing, we can discern the true, pure, and unadulterated voice of the community, those that are most impacted. We can gain information from those experts around why they need what they're telling us that they need. And then we can galvanize organizations from here, near, and far that have their own focus areas, but they gravitate toward issues that are bubbling to the surface as priorities for the community. Here, you have one place for anyone to come and become informed about what the issues are, gain understanding, introduce those issues, and then organize to do something about that. We've heard a lot of, and I don't know how many of you have visited events like this in the past where there's just so much passion and emotion around getting something done, and we just all go home, and we miss the opportunity to get behind a vehicle that can apply to everyone. Organizations like our Wisconsin Revolution and others in the room that you all are part of, there's so much great work to be had. And it would sadden me, and it does sadden me sometimes, to see us go in our separate directions without working together. The analogy that I used earlier was that we're sort of like a dysfunctional human being as a society. Our bodies are made up of things that are alive, that are talking to each other, that are working together, and they're on the same page most of the time. You know, and a healthy individual, they're living lives. They're a murmuration of lives, things that are coming alive and dying many, many times in the course of their lifetime. And because there's that collaboration and that unified effort, I can talk to you right now. I can digest my food, and I don't have to think about it. But when we graduate as cells of a society or as a city or cells of a nation, we start working against each other because we feel like we know what's best. And I venture to believe that none of us here has the complete answer, but I bet all of us have a piece to it. And if we can learn to lean on each other's perspective in a way that is documented, accountable, transparent, and gains influence in local government, then I think we can actually help those elected officials make real decisions that will last. We're not the first people to think that we should use the government to do what's best for the people. We're not the first people to feel like the government isn't doing that. But maybe we can be the first people to actually come together as one person that it has a thinking brain, and the Council of Communities hopes to be a way to actually see that mind come to fruition. So councilofcommunities.com, councilcio.com. Right now, there are 300 or so organizations that want to see something like this come to fruition. Madison and Dane County elected officials are also on board with giving this real teeth in the government, but we're going to need folks like yourselves and elected officials that are radical and about real change to get behind making something that is real, is respected, that the government has to lean on for decisions. And say that we're still in the true line community. And it's very clear what the people are saying that they need. And government is not doing that. We need something that can vote. Imagine what would be like if we weren't afraid of the election anymore, and we weren't afraid of whether or not our needs were going to be met, and we just knew that our voices would be heard. That's the Council of Communities.
John Stanley is with Wisconsin Grassroots Network, with the DeForest area progressives. He's also worked in the Bernie campaign, very involved with involving and identifying ways to make change in groups that are connected directly into their community and injecting progressive values into their community. So, John, take it from here.
WGN, as I said in an earlier session, has its partners here, Blue Nation and United to Amend. And we're very proud to have them as allies. The work that we do as WGN to try and unite people throughout Wisconsin, we have dealt with issues from sand mining to vouchers for the school system. I am really happy to see a lot of people here, like I said in the last session, who have returned and keep returning every year. Next year will be our 10th annual. But it takes a lot of effort to put something like this together. And it takes a lot of people to put something like this together. So my cry is actually for people to come and help us and volunteer, and ask for your organizations to look into WGN and to join us, because we do all need to work together. We do all need to the Republicans, well, they're not separated. Hopefully after this last bill they're starting to separate, but they're united, and that Ronald Reagan's, Republican shall not harm Republican has echoed through the party and down to this day, and the Republicans not only use it as a mantra, they practice what they preach. We have to be unified. I really appreciate what you had to say about the fact that we need to work together and we need to have that kind of unity amongst ourselves. The other thing that we need is that we need bodies. We need people. We need people to volunteer. We need people to take an hour a month to just come out and help us in our organizations, whatever they may be. We need people to step up and say, I can help, and I can, take half an hour, even half an hour to fill a seat in a meeting, in a town hall meeting, or I can paint a sign, or I can make a phone call. These are small things, and they can be of great help. And I am very proud of all the work that WGN has been able to, what we've been able to accomplish. We were able to pack the stadium for Bernie Sanders when he came to Madison, and that was 3 days. We had 3 days, and we got so many people in the Coliseum that we had to turn people away. And through the Bernie Sanders said that WGN, he just commended us for the work we did. Because we were able to get the word out and the reach out. And that was very important because of all the people who came and got to hear what that platform was about, what Bernie Sanders had to say, why he was running, why he thought that we shouldn't have spending our money to give our tax money to help, the 1%, the top 1% of the 1%. We need to continue his work. We need to continue his message. I was greatly honored to be a delegate for Bernie Sanders. And it's because I do believe in his message, and I do believe that we can unify. I do believe that we can organize, and I do believe we can all come around a certain cause. We're not separate up here. We're not fighting. We're not saying don't join this organization. We're saying come together and unify. And we're saying get your friends, get your family, have a discussion, have a party, house party. Bring people in and really make them part of the conversation. Not arguing with them, but make them part of the conversation. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
So questions and answers. Dave, you want to facilitate?
Sure. At some point I may have a response, but I'll facilitate. Yes.
This is the first time I've been to this event, and it's really great. I'm enjoying myself, learning a lot. And maybe I'm naive, probably am. But why can't you all, maybe I'll probably throw something at you, why can't you all be part of the Democratic Party? And there's, the political structure is what it is. And third-party candidates, they don't hardly ever win. And why can't you work within the Democratic Party?
Can you say what you mean by working inside the Democratic Party?
Have like a caucus for your group, or I don't really know, because I'm a member of the Democratic Party, but I said I'm tired of having time to learn more and get involved, so I don't know what I mean. But the structure is set up. The Republicans vote.
Can I offer a response? So there are 50,000 offices in Wisconsin. Fewer than 200 of them are partisan offices. So take that point right there. The second thing, a little bit more provocative. You may have heard me say this in the last one if you were there. We do not have political parties in America. We have rentable ballot lines for entrepreneurial candidates to use for lawful money laundering. This is not France. This is not Germany. This is not South Korea. We do not have internally coherent, constituency-rooted, programmatically driven political formations that are intent upon taking power to govern in a direction. The same political party that embraces, right now, Sherrod Brown and Cory Booker in the U.S. Senate is not one that is inherently going to take power to govern to create a just, equitable, and democratic society. I'm not interested in building a political formation that is going to advantage the people who see their responsibility, first of all, to Wall Street, as opposed to the people who live on Main Street, Elm Street, MLK Drive, Cesar Chavez Avenue. That is not a political party. That is a scam. And I'm a dues-paying Democrat because I think sometimes it's important to be involved in what happens inside the Democratic Party. I think it's far more important, though, that we have a political strategy that is responsive to how we're going to take power to govern in service of a left populist, a democratic populist, a progressive worldview. And we don't need to have ourselves inside a political party confined to and defined by that. What we need to have is a political organization of our own that can put people through democratic primaries, for example, in Wisconsin. That's how the party, so to speak, is actually defined. We need to have a political organization that is intent upon taking power to move our sort of program. As many people said, this is the most progressive platform the Democratic National Committee has ever adopted for a presidential election. And it did a goddamn thing, and none of us believed that no matter what the outcome of November 8th would have been, that platform would have been realized. I think that only when we have political power built amongst ordinary, everyday people in an organization dedicated to taking power to move on that, as opposed to simply taking power for people with next to their name, that's the only way we're actually going to achieve just, equitable, democratic society I think people in this room want to see.
Let them respond.
There's I love the question because to me it kind of illustrates the reason why we have to ask the question, right? I mean, you know, it's not a new system, right? And the problems aren't new either, right? So, you know, what do you do when you want to solve a problem? Do you do the things you were doing, or do you do something different? The other thing is that we're not dealing with democratic issues. We're not dealing with Republican issues. We're dealing with human issues. But to take a Democrat and or Republican approach is to isolate a vast majority that we need to rely on. Some of them don't even identify. And there is a very much so justified, and we've heard some of the reasons why, a justified aversion to this binary political system that has in many ways been traumatic and harmful to those that are most impacted by issues. People aren't necessarily interested in getting behind something that they view as a potential perpetrator of their issues. You know what I mean? It's kind of like asking your abuser to help you out, to help get you out of this abuse. And because of the nature of the beast, I can't point my finger to any particular person and say they are the reason, this particular Democrat is the reason for all of our issues, or this particular Republican is the reason for all of our issues. But what I can say is that the system, in my mind, is not broken. I think that it is functioning in such a way that is so streamlined and well-oiled as to disenfranchise and silence those that do not have a monetary, entrepreneurial, or high net worth interest in an agenda that, you know, is contrary in many ways to the healing, support, and upliftment of, you know, the vast majority of those most impacted by the issues that we're hoping to solve. So I think that it's counterintuitive to support something that is a big part of the problem. I think that we need something that's new, but not so new that it's a new something, just something to pull together the things that the wealth that's already here, right here on the ground with us.
When I started, I was really getting politically involved. I mean, I helped on campaigns. It was the recall, of course. It pulled me in. And to me, I had to really think about it because I was a Democrat now, but it was not about politics to me. It was about civics. It was about community. It was about right and wrong. It was about trying to change my life and the life for my family and for my friends. That's what it was about. It wasn't about what political party was in power or who should have been, you know, governor of Wisconsin. It was about the fact that I knew that Act 10 hurt a lot of people. It was about the fact that I knew that taking programs away from people who needed it was wrong. It was wrong, and it was detrimental to so many people in the state. So your question to me is a good question. It's an excellent question, but I think it's because I still see a difference when I look at myself and I examine what I'm doing for people. I see the difference between the political Democrat side that it's trying to organize and change the political realm, and that of the civic side of me that is trying to change it for the betterment of my community and for my family and friends.
Since I was the one who was most blatant about working outside of the Democratic Party and also elections not being the main strategy for change, I feel I do need to respond directly to your question, and then we'll go on to the other questions here. I worked for Eugene McCarthy. I was clean for Gene. I was 18 years old, couldn't vote at that time as an 18-year-old. And for the past 45, 50 years, I have watched wave after wave, generation after generation of young progressives, and even radicals, going into the Democratic Party and trying to reform the Democratic Party. And since, the 1970s, the Democratic Party has become more and more at the national level and the state level, not necessarily at the local level, totally controlled by corporate plutocratic interests in Wall Street. I'm saying that progressives shouldn't try and elect people to their township boards and their common councils, and even run people for state legislature. And it's possible that there will be another Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren or somebody who will be able to collect raise tens of millions of dollars and be somewhat competitive in races for higher office. But I am arguing two things. One is I'm arguing that corporate plutocratic money, given the entrepreneurial nature of the system that, as Peter has laid out, it's not going to be possible to elect tens of thousands of progressives at every level of government in this country to enact the major reforms that we need. And for every 10 quanta or units of effort that progressives put into doing this, attempting this sort of thing, year after year after year for decades, you're going to get maybe one, unit of output. You'll elect progressives here and there, but the national party and national politics is going to be steered, by corporate oligarchic interests, and that's whether it's the Republicans or the Republican light neoliberals. So I'm saying you have to have a plan B, and it has to be to lay the foundation for a future direct action movement. And that is not necessarily in contradiction to what you're trying to do. On one level it is, because I'm presenting a counter strategy. But on another level, there could be unity in terms of going out and educating people about the issues and getting people to vote for progressives or getting people to get ready to take to the streets or go on strike in their workplaces or whatever else. So I think, we can have some unity here. It will be not without its tensions, but we should possibly explore the ways that we can overlap. And I think the woman in the back had her hand up first.
Well, I actually just kind of want to comment. I agree with everything you guys are saying, actually.
What?
I go back to being like, the Democratic Party is completely broken, what the hell am I doing, blah, blah, blah. And then, reality sits in, and the thing of it is, we do have a two-party system, and you can force it from the outside, but until we can replace some of that leadership, until we can get in there with progressive voices and have a seat at the table, it's not going to change, no matter how many protests we do, no matter how many rallies we have, no matter how much we fight from the outside. And I really think that this either or is really hurting our movement right now. I think it needs to be a plan A, B, C, Z. We need to be hitting the party from every single angle.
I just like to speak to that. One of the biggest problems I think we have as a species dealing with our issues is we're dealing with our issues as being this species. We are the problem. We as a species have a real problem with being able to work together. We have this tribal instincts. We have this separation and so on. My hope is to bring the whole idea of live and let live to all of this. That there are people of goodwill going to be in the Democratic Party making that change, and that's okay. And we do not denigrate them, we embrace them. There are going to be people that feel that that's not their path, but there is another way, and we must embrace them. And the key is, to me, is that we understand and know what each other are doing so that we can embrace and enhance in our circles of influence what's going on. So our knowledge becomes power. within the Democratic Party, knowing what's going on with our revolution, knowing what's going on with WWI, whatever. We know what's going on. We know there was a women's march. We know there was a climate march of 150,000 people in New York, and we effectively bring that about. We know about climate change. We educate and so on. Now, we're not going to find a one thing fits all. We've got to embrace one another. And embrace what is a diversity, and not separate with the differences and think that there's one path and everybody should do one path, because it's not going to happen. There's too many variables in our life experience and who we are as a species. So learning to love and embrace and accept diversity is going to be key to our development of this core power that's going to change our society. And I'll get off my
I gotta
soapbox.
push back on that a little bit, just a little bit. So the thinking here, what I've heard is that there's this assumption that things are just the way that they are, and there's a barrier to what we can do, and I think that's bullshit. But it's true to the extent that people actually believe that. You know what I mean? To people who say, well, this is the way that it is, so we kind of gotta,
stay within that.
maybe one day we'll be able, but not that day isn't today, and we can continue to say that forever. But when enough people say, actually, you know what, I think we should do something differently, then that becomes the norm. And then folks will begin to say, well, we've kind of been doing this, for quite some time. I don't see the reason why we should go back to a binary system. And the idea that people really do feel like the system doesn't serve them, but they're willing to support it because they just can't fathom an alternative. It's self-disempowering. It's self-inflicted slavery. And so when are we as people going to stop believing that lie of this is the way that we have to do it? We don't have to do, man, I'm about to be like you in a second. I gotta channeling my mom right now. I think that we experience that variance all the time, and there's still ways that we function together as a society because there's a fundamental understanding that we have with each other, right? We don't just think it's okay for us to go around and I'm just taking people's stuff. You know what I mean? And because as a society we all agree on that, we can function. And I can leave my iPad out there and I have some level of trust that it's still going to be there when I walk out, because as a society we've all agreed that this taking of other people's things isn't okay. Now, in what ways can we agree and function as a society? I think that we have to find that in a sustainable way. But leaning on these exclusionary methods and these exclusionary organizations, I think that is where we get this level of division that's impossible to come together. But if we can find that fundamental ground of everybody brushes their teeth. You know what I mean? We're all different. We all brush our teeth. We hope. Some days, but
Some of us don't have teeth.
right, there you go. There's that variance. We're all believe in taking care of ourselves. You know what I mean? So we have to get out of this disempowered thinking and start to foster a culture of community empowerment.
The gentleman in blue.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I think it would be great if there was a Democratic Party that we could all join and feel comfortable with. That's an ideal that I think many of us wish. Unfortunately, we're not there. And I don't think that the Democratic Party is going to change until it feels threatened. And it's also not only going to take that, but it's going to take progressives like Dawn, who just joined the Democratic Party on the county level, and other county level people getting involved and helping from within to institute change within the Democratic Party. You got to have both. We need people like you that are dedicated to the party to get in there and advocate for change and say, look at what these guys are doing, and support what they're doing, and say we need to bring that into the party and come together.
What I would like to do is take a stack, because we got, what, less than 10 minutes left, or how long do we have?
Less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, so I'd like to see who else in the audience wants to say something that hasn't had a chance to say anything, and then I don't know if we'll have time for recaps or not, but what's your name?
Me?
Yeah.
My name is Josh
Okay,
Skolnick.
Josh, I'm just taking a stack. The woman in the black,
Oh, I thought.
okay.
Mark?
Mark,
Jeff.
Jeff,
Mary Kay.
Mary Kay, and then we'll let Max have the last word.
There's
I'm
another one
sorry.
there.
I'm sorry.
I
Karen.
think he thinks
Karen.
that Max Lowe.
Okay. Okay, and since we have only about 8 minutes, maybe we can go over a few minutes. Please try and keep your question or comment to like 2 minutes. Is that reasonable? Okay, Josh.
My thing was like use some of the machinery of the system to affect our own change, not necessarily like within a party, but my idea that I'm just throwing this out there like for something that people might want to think about is local self-reliance nonprofits.
Okay.
Using that are for all the goals that everybody but also to build communities. Then what that does is that I've always thought of the idea that it would be great to go on your tax return and say I don't want to fund this X. Check a box, but this would be the way that you could do
Tax
that.
withholding,
And this
yeah.
isn't like an end run; it's like a passive resistance. We want the government's not going to get it done, and we're not getting candidates in there. I'm not saying that that's going to take away but it'll be like a lead by example type of thing, and then the candidates can come from that.
Okay. Thank you, Josh. Mark.
Yeah, it's just a question, it's probably rhetorical, but why is it that a lot of, even revolutionary type of people, I agree with everybody that has everything that's been said, but why do they think it's harder to change the Democratic Party than it is to change the United States?
Okay.
I don't understand.
Should act like a
Karen,
friend.
or I'm sorry.
Karen? Oh,
All right.
I came in late, so I'm not sure if you addressed the speakers or not, and I don't know about you, but I am sick of an economy based on endless war. And if we have militarism that's accepted as the base of both parties, we are not going to use that money for human needs. And I am myself sick of endless war. And I don't want to have anything to do with parties that are taking minerals from other countries, oil from other countries, to enrich our 1%ers. So that's just my comment.
Thank you. May.
I'm going to be very practical.
Right.
It seems to me there's a multitude of groups that function in this state, and some have subchapters or there are smaller groups that function in a locality. And we need two types of sharing at the highest level that each group has. Say they're only in Southwest Wisconsin, or the Working People's Party is in certain areas of the Coalition for Citizens Action, cooperative and so forth, and our Wisconsin Revolution. Many they have their highest level, whatever it is, and there should be sharing. We should make a commitment that we will share upcoming events and invite co-sponsors in advance so that they can go back to their own groups to decide if they can. Also, supporting candidates appropriate at that level, and international and more people-to-people type, like a tourist coming through or something. Okay, so that should be shared at a state or whatever the highest level is of that organization. But then also on the local level, Kenosha Forward or something should be sharing with whatever, the League of Women Voters chapter in that county, or, you
They
know,
are.
whatever,
Forward Kenosha is.
yeah,
They are
right,
working really good with all different groups right now.
right. And that could be a model of how, the sharing gets done also at a local level.
They're an indivisible group, just so people know who
Oh,
Forward
okay, so
Kenosha
maybe they
is.
would also have, if Indivisible also has at a highest level statewide, because we wanna, I think that level of sharing, where then there's choices from the individual groups, whether, yes, we'll join in this or we won't. I was disappointed in the Medicare, the rallies and things, where it was sort of hit and miss as to whether groups knew who was doing what, when, and.
They're still organizing though, that's the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just started, I think, like 4 months ago,
Yeah,
so
no,
they're still working their butts out.
Sure, I'm just saying, that should be, I think that would be the practical goal
Are you
of
from the Kenosha
collaboration.
area? Are you from the Kenosha area?
No, I'm with our Wisconsin Revolution, and I'm in the Ridgeway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's one
G-
other
give it-
one more.
person, he had his,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, all I wanted to do is thank all of you for what you're saying, especially the three young men,
Yes.
because they're our future. You look around this room, most of us are from the
Thank you
big
for
room,
calling
so you need
me up.
these three young
Join the-
men for our future.
Join the Great Panthers. Well, the Great Panthers, also Maggie Kuhn believed in an intergenerational coalition. We absolutely need that. And I'm told that I can give each of the people 1 minute recap, and then we absolutely get out of
I
here.
would say that, well, with Democratic Party, don't think too linearly, or, you know, you can, just because you're in the Democratic Party doesn't mean you can't vote for a Republican or a Green Party member. Is that it's a tool, and it should be used for a tool. But I would like to say, in response to what you said, that WGN has what is called a memorandum of understanding, and we do share and we do work with other groups, and we'd be happy to work with any group, because DeForest was my group. DeForest Group is a member of WGN, and we're happy to work alongside them.
Thank you. If I only have 60 seconds, I would say we got to stop talking about this, y'all. This is not a conversation piece anymore. It's never been, but we can see that more clearly now. It is getting increasingly more real by the day, and the more that we just deliberate and I think I'll go eat something. I mean, we have to do something. You know what I mean? And because time is one of our most precious resources, I encourage you to think of where you are going to spend your time and your energy, and to what end. You know, and own that to the fullest. If you want to just figure out how you can support the Democratic Party because it's something that's established and you just really believe the system has hope, great, do that. If it's something like the Council of Communities that you feel can lead to a future of change, a new way of making decisions for everybody, empowering the voice of those most impacted, including yourself, then do that. I'm biased, of course. I feel like I want my voice to be heard. I feel like it's not heard. And if you feel that way too, come to councilofcommunities.com and be a part of shaping what this looks like so that it can be something that is actually used and that actually does do what we hope it will do.
Thank you, Eric. Peter?
So I think progressive forces, popular forces, absolutely as a necessary condition for anything must have an orientation towards taking power to govern. And that means a program that we want to move and our own people in office. That requires an organization that is serious with a strategy and a plan to win to make that happen. So what we're doing through our Wisconsin Revolution, continuing the political revolution that was started by Bernie Sanders' candidacy, is taking up that left populist politics, and we want to invite you to come be part of it. So let me paint a brief picture of what this is going to look like. Over the next, let's call it through 2020, we are going to take up the elements of the Sanders platform and work to bring them into policy at the local and state level. We are not going to win at the state level, you probably suspect. We're going to win in city councils and county boards around Wisconsin, and we're going to lose some. And the activists from the movements, whether it's resisting the Dakota Access Pipeline or people fighting to get big money out of politics, are going to build a base and a profile in these campaigns around this set of platform issues. And they're going to be the people who run for office. They're going to run for city councils and county boards, and they are going to win and show that our governance can actually work when we have the power in government. And then just like Bernie Sanders, whose first elected office was mayor of Burlington, and did such a damn fine job that they gave him a promotion to the U.S. Congress, then to the Senate, and almost the White House, those folks who are winning county board seats and city council seats and school board seats around Wisconsin are going to be the folks who are promoted to be the next generation in our state legislature, maybe even a governor. And by 2020, I think we can run, and this isn't just a nice little number, this is actually based in some math, we can run 2,020 of our own people to take office in cities and counties and townships and villages and school boards around the state and take over the state capitol. So that with this redistricting lawsuit that's happening, maybe the Chris Rockwoods of the world are going to have a chance to win seats in office, and our ideas are going to be in government, and we're going to make that real. And that vision for a just, equitable, and democratic society, and probably on the Democratic Party line, I might add, that's part of this. We are going to start to create that political revolution that Bernie Sanders talked about. But what happens in Wisconsin doesn't stay here. Walker's Wisconsin became Trump's America. If we do this here in Wisconsin, this will be the leading edge of reforming and maybe even revolutionizing the political landscape in this country. So we want to invite you to join us. So I'm going to stand over here, and I want you to come sign up with us and help build this political future worth fighting for.
Okay.
I'll forego my time since I spoke in the beginning, but the only thing I'm going to say is if Plan A, so admirably articulated here, doesn't work out, you better have a Plan B. Okay. Thank you very much.
So there is the raging grannies are going to be in the